constipation in the morning, then we had some tea, coffee and biscuits, and now we have got diarrhea.
After food, what will you have? After food, what will you have?
After food, we have to be in the hospital. So, common causes of diarrhea which we know is infected. And other rare causes are inflammatory bowel disease, lactose intolerance you should keep in mind for children, and most often than not but antibiotic associated diarrhea. I gave amoxicillin and the child started getting diarrhea. That's the common thing that we see. So antibiotic associated diarrhea. Now among the infective causes, viral is the commonest: rotavirus, adenovirus, enterovirus. Bacterial we've got Shigella, Salmonella, E. coli, cholera. We've got others like amoebiasis, giardiasis, cryptosporidium, and rarely we come across fungal diarrhea. So, diarrhea can affect anyone. It's an occupational hazard, as you can say. And I think doctors are more prone to diarrhea than anyone. So, it's important to identify each kind of diarrhea. I have a standard prescription that everyone writes for diarrhea is ofloxacin. I bet all of you also do that. Write ofloxacin for every patient of diarrhea. Which a bacterial, amoebic, let's treat everything once and for all. Right? So, everything. So, it's important, and why it is important to identify. So best way to identify is this is the checklist you have to keep whether there is blood in stools or not. If there is blood in stools, antibiotic will be required. Is it watery or semi-loose diarrhea? That is important. Is diarrhea causing a perianal rash? These three things if you keep in mind, you can identify any diarrhea properly. So look for blood in stools, whether it's watery or semi-loose, and whether it's causing a perianal rash. Now why are these three things important? Blood in stools can occur with dysentery, can occur with amoebiasis, or it can occur with inflammatory bowel disease. Now, how do we differentiate between the three? It's very simple to identify between all three of them. Inflammatory bowel disease, it's bloody diarrhea. It's actually not stool, it's just blood coming out through the rectum. So, bloody diarrhea is inflammatory bowel disease. Dysentery is blood mixed with the stools. And amoebiasis is also blood mixed with the stools. So you see stools and blood in it, whereas inflammatory is bloody diarrhea. Now how do you differentiate between this? Dysentery and amoebiasis. Dysentery, usually there may be fever. Amoebiasis, no fever. Most important is tenesmus. If the patient says he feels pain prior to going to defecate, that is amoebiasis. There is no tenesmus in bacillary dysentery. Dysentery will be loose stools, not exactly watery, whereas amoebiasis is semi-loose. Now why is that? Because dysentery infection is in the starting of the colon, whereas amoebiasis infection is in the transverse colon or the descending colon. So the stools are more well formed by the time it reaches there. So semi-loose stools, whereas dysentery is going to be watery to loose stools. Remember, dysentery is still more common as compared to amoebiasis. So if you get blood in stools, first treat for dysentery, then consider amoebiasis. In fact, now WHO has put it as a protocol saying that treat every blood in stools with antibiotics first. After 7 days does not respond, think of doing metronidazole. But don't give metronidazole right from the beginning.
What happens if you give early?
Any antibiotic given
For
over
7 days, which child and which mother would like to eat?
Yeah. Now what will happen if you give together? Any antibiotic. You will
Not any antibiotic.
Yeah.
But if we think that he metronidazole,
Yeah.
but is there harm? Because the child will be better faster, mother will be late.
Metronidazole is very difficult to take. It's got a very metallic taste. I have to see people who have to complete 7 days of metronidazole.
Nowadays, Cetrozil is available.
You can't use it in children.
Children cannot
You
use
cannot use it.
Cetrozil, right?
Only thing that you can use in children is tinidazole, metronidazole. Maybe
Sorry.
tinidazole, metronidazole, maybe ornidazole, not secnidazole. It's not approved yet in children because we don't know the pharmacokinetic in children. So if we are going to use metronidazole, metallic taste, all of us have taken metronidazole sometime or the other. The metallic taste after the second dose is so difficult to bear that parents give up doing the medicine.
This is true also for the adult, what you say, like bloody and all.
Yes, this is true for adults also. This is true for adults. But in case if you are suspecting amoebiasis much earlier, you get a typical tenesmus, don't wait for it, go ahead. But if you are not able to differentiate between the two, treat the bacillary first, then consider amoebiasis. Now, why the second point? Why do you want to know whether it's watery versus semi-loose? Watery means infection in the small intestine. Semi-loose means infection somewhere in the large intestine. Watery means large quantity can lead to dehydration. But watery also means small intestine, so wide open. Whereas semi-loose means maybe it's in the large intestine, so maybe bacteria. So that's why it's important to know a difference between watery versus semi-loose diarrhea. Now infections in the small intestine, viral, giardiasis, cryptosporidia, E. coli, salmonella, cholera. Out of these, which will require antibiotics? Cholera. Salmonella only if it is causing blood, otherwise it is self-limiting.
Only if it is causing.
Blood in streets, otherwise it is self-limiting. E. coli, 4 types of E. coli. E. coli, pathogenic, enterohemorrhagic, enterotoxicogenic, and enteroinvasive. Invasive will invade, cause blood. Hemorrhagic will cause blood. Toxicogenic and pathogenic causes only watery diarrhea. They don't require treatment with antibiotics. So only your invasive and hemorrhagic require antibiotics, and that anyway you are identifying by blood and stools. So again, watery diarrhea due to E. coli, no antibiotics required. Cryptosporidia and giardiasis you usually don't see in a normal population. It would be more of malnourished children, immunocompromised children. So any watery diarrhea, usually you don't require antibiotics unless it's cholera. Now, E. coli nowadays, we've been telling all parents please boil water and drink. There is so much of sewage contamination, and the way that you can identify contaminated drinking water is look for E. coli. We should not even have a single E. coli in our drinking water. If we get that, that means the water supply is contaminated. I already told you about the types of E. coli. So, infections in small intestine, when we look under the microscope and identify, we realize that we don't really need to treat watery diarrhea with antibiotics. Unless it's your giardiasis, cryptosporidia, or it is cholera. So which one requires specific treatment? Viral is symptomatic treatment. Giardiasis, yes. Cryptosporidia, yes. E. coli only in dysentery. Salmonella, again only in dysentery. Cholera, yes. And this you can identify. Cholera, one stool child is dehydrated. That's severe. So any one stool and child gets dehydrated is cholera. Rice water stools. Cryptosporidia, giardiasis usually are malnourished children. Okay, so we don't need to treat watery diarrhea. Now how do you differentiate between the two? Cryptosporidia, persistent watery diarrhea. Watery diarrhea that goes on and on and on. Think of cryptosporidia, immunocompromised patient. Cholera, rice water stool, diarrhea with one purge, dehydration. Giardiasis usually are malnourished children, very severely malnourished. The third point that you had to check was perianal rash. A diarrhea that causes...
Last. Rash, why rash on the first day?
No, now coming to the rash. This was the differentiation between a watery diarrhea of the three. Now the rash. Now why is the rash important? Now why can the rash happen? One is because the child is purging so much. He is constantly in that stool and is causing irritation. So chemical rash. Second is lactose intolerance. Child is not able to tolerate glucose, and that glucose is not getting absorbed, and that is causing irritation around the perineum. So lactose intolerance. Third thing that can cause perineal rash is fungal. Candida. But fungal is like a satellite lesion. So you get a rash and then you get satellite nodules here and there. So that is fungal. Most common is